shot.
Smell like real good in this. They put me one time for a 3-camera shoot when Biden was the vice president in like, you know that brick that's like in elementary schools, that reflective one?
Yeah.
It was that brick, but it was a makeup room in the back of the theater with windows and glass all around it. And the guy, the advanced guy's like, you're gonna have to do something. And I walked in and I was like, fucking kidding me? So I went to Walmart and I just bought black sheets and shit the whole thing, and that's all I can do.
Nice.
You get one flag and black sheets.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
And then the guy afterwards, he's like, I told you to do that. I'm like, bullshit, you did fuck off, but you get in this shitty room.
Yeah, I know, that's a front, yeah.
It was like all the stations, but
It was, I took pictures of Kane, so you were right before me.
Okay.
what are you thinking? Just take it.
Guys, I gotta find spot.
Great office to do this stuff, you know, and some hogging in this flag. We'll make the next place a picture. The drawing. I don't know. The one where you signed the one with the yeah, they need to change that one. When they gotta sub that out for something else. For a while, Nathan Deal had a giant wrestling belt, like from World Wrestling Center. And so it was like this big like throw belt. It was the craziest thing. I love going to the governor's office because you get peanuts. It's great. Yeah. You get a free snack whenever you go there. Well, Deal also had 2 TVs there for a while, and Kemp got rid of them. There used to be Fox and CNN, and then Kemp got rid of CNN in the lobby area. The lobby, is there only one there now?
Again, maybe still has a picture of him and Trump. But it is in the back office, but the door's always open. You can see it.
Yeah.
Out by Air Force One. Man, I had that thing in the fire. I mean, if he dogged me out like that, I mean, I don't care. Not politics. Going in, and like that, I'm like,
I was in Jeff Duncan's office lately, but he had a couple of them. Just
really?
Trump, yeah.
Because the outer office for Kemp is like back that door, is on the door on the left or the right as you look at his desk?
Yeah, this is more like
The one with the Trump picture?
Yeah.
On the left.
On the left. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a conference room on the right.
Right.
who judge. I just have,
Because you never really get any time. You get like 10 minutes set up on any of those.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like, ah.
It's like,
I mean, at least they like it.
good if you
Yeah.
give us a second.
At least they have lights.
Yeah.
So property on this one. Up south.
They really find somebody to do that. Light it. All of it.
Have the lights there.
Somebody just needs to do it. Here are the lights. Here's you want to have the outfit for talking.
Yeah, I know. One was not.
Yeah.
You have this mic as well.
We had that now.
But I would just.
I mean, it was a lot of restaurant furniture. Blue curtains, the lights, the plumbing, everybody had their spot.
Was it the new Capitol or the old one? The tower looking one or the ceremonial?
It was the ceremony. Well, it was in the bunker, the press. Well, this was a while back.
What was the male governor having external relations? I read the story. He held a presser in the ceremonial Capitol. Yeah. The one where Jefferson Davis took his oath. And I wrote a line in my wire that said something like, "It's not the first act of rebellion in this room."
You talking about the Governor Bentley?
Yes.
I was down there during that time.
Really?
Oh, yeah, we held that press conference in that room. I'm like, seriously? You're doing it in this room?
This is what you know what cracked me up? Okay, the day that they broke up after the divorce, I was sitting down in my little small station in Dothan, Alabama. And this is what I've envisioned happen down in Montgomery, at WSFA. You have a producer or somebody sitting there browsing court records. They come across, Diane Bentley versus Robert Bentley. They probably did this. Rubbed their eyes to make sure they were seeing it correctly. Did this. John, come here. Breaking news. Then it just spread like that.
Wildfire. It was, you know, when somebody just thumbing the court records, it was like, what is
That's what I'm
this?
saying.
Somebody's gonna have to keep an eye on their head.
Man, he was so, that press conference was so mad at the press conference, like, yo, bro.
I
Like,
used to interview
seriously.
him all the time, and when he would come down to my neck of the woods, after a while, I just quit asking him about it, because I just like, you done wrong, they've already talked about it, there's nothing else to ask about.
That man got so angry. Like, what's
He would come down to my little territory, and he loved, you know, parading, getting out of the car, waving at the camera.
yeah.
But the one thing I do feel like about Governor Debbie was that he would actually answer whenever you asked. And I appreciated that.
Except for that one thing he didn't want to talk about.
Yeah. You know, because they sent me, you know, down in my redneck city, like, go over there, he's having a press conference in Lucky Mark, you know, about the economic development. Go over there and ask him where he can he's gonna withhold, the money from certain districts if their legislators don't get on board with his tax hike. So I went over there. PBS had actually beat me to the question, but they didn't ask it the way I wanted it. So I reworded it, and he answered it, and that's what I used to appreciate about him.
Did you reach Janet?
Just like you said, what else am I supposed to do?
She's good.
We have this deficit.
I'll tell her.
I guess so.
I mean, we don't have a way to come up with this money.
I'll call her real quick and tell her what order to go in.
Wait, so Kay Ivey was right after him, right?
Ooh, and Ivory came down to my area.
Yeah. She was the
I said,
one right after,
I said,
right?
so Kay, what is your relationship now with the governor after this has come out? You know what that lady said on camera? She said, I'm not concerned about Governor Bentley. She said, but I do applaud his wife for speaking out on domestic violence.
Like grandmas.
Ooh, that, now see, that right there was a nugget, because at the time, no one knew that, because the divorce records were sealed, so no one knew that he would actually hit her.
Thank you,
It was a
ma'am.
mess. They sent this kid down there who had just started at my station. He was heavy into politics, and I'm not. And he loved it. They sent him to Montgomery every day, and then eventually just left him there. Today, he's a Washington D.C. bureau. You know, that's his niche right there.
Yeah.
It's just a different, they've been around, it's just,
Cheaper.
possibly. Honestly, just whatever. We originally had live view, like, very briefly.
Yeah.
And then they went to TDU, and then we just switched to this.
Yeah.
Like, the last couple months.
Whatever control gets,
Yeah.
and then you get the transmitting version. Whatever works best for your controller, and you take in video.
They're okay, I mean, the packs are bigger than TDU.
I don't care what you got, I was just curious. If that was anything, and you go to,
I just want.
Actually, they were reading like the
Yeah.
arbitrator job.
Just the thing that pack itself. Okay, so it's in the circle of 4 megabits. So the plate is in the middle, not the bottom. Yeah. When it's running, you want to take an extra battery for the send the battery life. You put it here because
Who needs a copy of the lawsuit? Because I'm printing them out right now. I'll be right back. I told you. Did you send me this one? Yeah, I mean, you can pass that one out because it's printed, but it's printed slow.
Just do it, it's gonna be fun.
what's that? Oh, yeah, the new, yeah.
Almost 90% do it right here.
Yeah. Makes more sense.
No, I don't.
4, okay.
I would have like one of the calls or something.
This is similar questions. Mayor
And then they and the, like everything, yeah. And it was, I mean, it's not like I didn't hear it.
Yeah. One thing to say it, but then when you write it and try to.
Yes.
Should we do it?
Yeah. It's been correct since I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's real interesting.
I think there were 2 more people that needed a copy. I know Angelique was one. Who else needed one? It's right here. Thank you. Thank you, guys, for your patience. Is that time?
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Attorney L. Chris Stewart, STWART, along with Attorney Maoli Davis, Harold Spence, Attorney Justin Miller, Attorney Mike Roth. We proudly represent Tanaya Pilgrim and Messiah Young. You see them and their family are here to support. And we're here to announce the filing of the lawsuit against the city and all responsible parties. But before getting into the details of this lawsuit, we wanted to remind the country and the city of how horrific this incident that has not received the proper attention that it deserves for the abuse of kids. We have been caught in the George Floyd case, which we had the honor of working on, and all of the other tragedies, but what we are not discussing enough is the damage to children and the horrific nature that these kids were attacked. You can play the first one, Kelly. This is a reminder of what happened on that day. This is the body cam video that we've been able to get from the officers. Oh, we're not done yet. You can play the next one. This is the body cam from Officer Carlos Smith. Why this is important is what you're going to hear is an actual officer screaming that he has a gun. You'll see from the video he doesn't see a gun. He's not even in an angle to see a gun, but he starts screaming he has a gun, which is a death sentence for young black people. He screams he's got a gun multiple times, which could have easily led to every officer out there starting to shoot. We play it. And this is the state of policing in our city. I think you now have a great example of when an officer will scream there's a gun when there isn't. There was no gun, there was no weapon, there wasn't even mace, there was nothing. Yet he screamed multiple times from a distance he's got a gun, which could have got these kids killed and bystanders that were near. Because if one of the other officers believed him, they would have all started opening fire. It's just like when they scream stop resisting and no one's resisting. It's to justify bad behavior, which ends today. And and Mauli's going to discuss the impact of this situation.
Good morning. I'm Mauli Davis with the Davis Bozeman Law Firm. And as I looked at this, and I looked at these young people and their reaction, and I think of my own sons, I thought of a quote from this morning. I was just thinking about accountability. And I know the pain that they've been going through and they continue to go through. And accountability is what relieves pain and brings peace. And unfortunately, there has been no accountability. The city that we all love, the city that has been lifted up on so many occasions as a city of civil rights, a city of human rights, a city of giants and of heroes and sheroes, this city has failed to take responsibility for the children that these parents entrusted to this city. And it's really overwhelming to think that they could be handled in this way and their lives change so dramatically and no one step up and say, we need to make this right. That's the only reason that we're here. We're here because the city has been unwilling to make this right. And when we say city, we mean the entire city. From the mayor's office to the city council, the entire city is responsible for what happened to these young people on this dreadful night. And we as a community have to take a position that enough is enough. We said last week when we filed Sequoia Turner that June would be the month of reckoning for the city of Atlanta. We would file a lawsuit and encourage our civil rights partners who do this work to file a lawsuit every week in the month of June. We're about to celebrate Juneteenth. It's going to be a federal holiday and celebrate liberation, and we are still treated as second-class citizens in this country and in a city that is majority black run. That's shameful. And so on today, we filed another one. And on next week, our brothers in this struggle will file another one. And then the week after, we'll file another one until we recognize the need for change immediately. And so we're proud to stand shoulder to shoulder, back to back with Chris and Justin and this entire law firm as we deal with the Cochran firm and any other firm that's fighting for justice and trying to change and transform this system that we see harming and hurting in ways that is unimaginable. For these young people to have this video out the way that it is, and they have to live the rest of their lives with this experience, is something that is unthinkable. But we're here to hold the city and all those responsible accountable. And with that, Attorney Harold Spence from our office will walk you all through the lawsuit so you can have a better understanding of what we filed and why we filed it. Harold.
Thank you. My name is Harold Spence. I'm a partner with the Davis Bozeman Law Firm. Mauli Davis talked to you about accountability. And while we filed this lawsuit today, it could just as easily be called an accountability action. And when you're talking about accountability, you're ultimately talking about character. And the true test of character, you don't get that true test when everything is going well. You get the true test of character when things don't go well, when you're not your best self, when you've not had your proudest day. And how do you respond when you have not had that proudest day? That's the true test of character. But if that is the test of character, what we see repeatedly in these civil rights cases is that the city of Atlanta fails that test of character. This most recent failure has caused us to file this lawsuit today. It's a lawsuit we filed against the city of Atlanta, against the mayor of the city of Atlanta, against the current police chief of the city of Atlanta and 9 police officers who were employed by the city of Atlanta at the time of these events on May 30th, 2020. You saw the truly horrific video that we just saw. One day after the events that are the subject of this lawsuit occurred, the mayor said, and I quote, "There clearly was an excessive use of force." This is one time we're in agreement with the mayor. She said that after extensive discussions with the police chief and after watching this very disturbing video, she felt that certain officers should be terminated. And they were. However, there's still been no accountability to the true victims of this occurrence. If there was excessive force, then certainly the victims of that excessive force need to be treated fairly and justly. So we filed this lawsuit in federal court here in Atlanta against the parties that I just identified. We've made a number of claims in this lawsuit. First, we're contending that there was never any basis for the police to seize the physical persons of Messiah Young and Taniyah Pilgrim, or to seize their vehicle. There was never a basis. Taniyah Pilgrim was never charged with a crime at all. And if she wasn't charged with a crime, then what is the law enforcement predicate for seizing her person? Messiah Young was charged with eluding police. That charge was dropped the next day. Why? Because they were well aware that it had no factual or legal basis. So if there was no factual or legal basis to charge Messiah Young with the crime, then why was his person seized? Why was he arrested on May 30th? Perhaps we'll get an answer to that question in this lawsuit and as we go through the lawsuit process. We filed a number of other claims in addition to claims that their persons and property should not have been seized on May 30th. We filed a claim for excessive force. That is a constitutional violation. It doesn't take being a lawyer. It doesn't take being steeped in the law to understand that what Attorney Chris Stewart just showed on this screen constitutes excessive force. And it's good that we have this on video. There was an advertising executive in the 1920s, Fred Barnard, who coined a phrase that we still use to this day, and that is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then how much is a videotape worth? So you got to see the harrowing scenes that these videotapes depicted. You got to see the excessive force yourself. You got to see how frightening this was to these 2 young people. I can't imagine being their ages and going through what they went through. With Taniyah Pilgrim being tased twice, Messiah Young being tased twice, guns pointed at them being forcefully pulled from their vehicle and then slammed onto the concrete pavement. Can't imagine what these young people went through that night and what they're continuing to experience. And why did all of this happen? It began because Messiah Young took out his cell phone and was filming a city of Atlanta police officer's rough treatment of a citizen. Something that he had every right to do. He was in his vehicle. It was downtown. Traffic was at a near standstill. And he was just filming. And because of their anger over the filming, all of this ensues. So we filed a claim that part of the police misconduct in this case was in retaliation for Messiah Young's exercise of his First Amendment right to simply film that officer's actions. We've also filed a claim against the mayor and the city of Atlanta. Barely 4 hours before the curfew of May 30th went into effect, the mayor issued an executive order. But she didn't provide for any vehicles that were traveling on the roadway. What about the folks who didn't know about this executive order that established a curfew that had only been imposed 4 hours earlier? Two of the people who didn't know about the curfew were Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim. She also didn't make any allowance in that executive order for vehicles traveling through the city of Atlanta. So we're contending that that executive order was vague, overbroad, and constitutionally unenforceable. And that's why we've made claims against the mayor and the city of Atlanta. Now, we've also made claims that didn't originate just on May 30th, but that are reflected in a long history in the city of Atlanta's police department of deliberate indifference towards certain types of police misconduct. The law requires police officers, when they see other officers engaging in constitutionally excessive and improper conduct, to intervene. No officer intervened that night. In fact, they all became part of this maniacal sort of feeding frenzy against these two young people. And so when you see the lawsuit, you'll see that we've cited a number of instances over the past 2 decades when the city of Atlanta has been informed of excessive force claims and where officers who should have intervened to stop their compatriots from engaging in this excessive force failed to do so. We've also made a claim in this lawsuit that the city of Atlanta fails to seriously investigate instances of excessive force. And we've cited a number of instances over the past 20 years when the city failed to do that. So when the city fails to adequately investigate claims of excessive force, when the city fails to hold accountable officers who should have intervened, what does this do? It gives them license to act in a way in accordance with what they have to believe is city policy, to act the way that they did on May 30th, 2020. Additionally, we've made claims under state law against the officers in their individual capacities for assault and battery, trespass, false arrest or false imprisonment. And one of the most serious claims that we've made, you heard Attorney Chris Stewart refer to, willful misrepresentation of a material fact and deceit. There was no gun. But the mere claim that there was a gun caused one officer to draw his weapon and to point it at Messiah Young. It's not difficult to think how much more tragic this incident could have been because of that material misrepresentation. So these are some of the claims that we are bringing against the city of Atlanta, the mayor, and those 9 officers. And we're proud to work with the Stewart Law Firm to hold these defendants accountable for the harm, the needless and unnecessary harm that they've done to these 2 young people.
On the night of May 30th, 2020, a huge part of my life was diminished, and trying to move forward from this point is very, very irritating and very, very kind of triggering at a point. Just seeing brutality continue. You would think that there would be some type of reform or change at this point. Every day I'm reminded of something from that night, or the weeks after, having to push through and kind of, questioned everything. I was probably the most confused I've ever been, and I still am. There's no reason that the events that took place that night should have transpired how they did. It makes no sense at all. These are so-called professionals doing their so-called job, but we see on a daily basis that there seems to be like a never-ending cycle of this, and that's very, very like no. At the end of the day, we can do what we can to try to move forward from a traumatic experience or something that, was life-changing. But until there are steps taken around the central problem, I'm going to be reminded of this every single day of my life. So there just needs to be something done so that people don't experience this ever again. There are families throughout America who have lost people, due to situations just like this. And I'm blessed to be alive. I'm blessed to, be here talking to you all, but
Hi everyone. I would just like to start off by saying that it's very unfortunate that it's over a year later and we're still in the same position that we were in literally on May 30th. Living through this has been such a horrifying experience, and like the anxiety that night brings me every day, the nightmares that I still had to experience almost every single night. It's like life took a total turn for something that we didn't ask to be involved with. We had plans to be moving on with our lives, going to, graduate, going to get a job, and unfortunately that's been put on a hold, and it's an indefinite hold because we really don't know when this will be over. And other than the mental toll that this took, it also took physical tolls on my body. I have to now get shots in my I just had to go through a lot of medical stuff that has to be ongoing at this point because the damages that were done are unable to be resolved and can't be resolved. So yes, I just hope that, like Messiah said, that we can see some sort of change and we can hopefully get this process going and over with, because our lives are now at a standstill because of this, when we should be able to be moving on as, the officers are doing and, other people are doing. And it's just very unfair and very sad that this has to be the situation. Thank you.
And before you hear from the parents and we wrap up, Kelly, can you play the former chief's slide? This is the problem that we face with the city of Atlanta. We're going to be forced to litigate this case for years, because the city of Atlanta, city attorney, refused to settle these cases or take them seriously. We've tried to talk to them. We're going to be dragged through it for years, which makes no sense because the former chief herself said this.
And we went from there to 3 in the morning, and it's being put before me that we're this video. And we went from there. in the morning, and it's being put before me that this video that was really shocking to watch, and how we were manhandling a couple of young people in their car. And to be fair, I knew it was bad, but I really wanted to believe that the body-worn camera footage would provide some larger view that could better rationalize why we got to this phase. And having spent most of the afternoon with the mayor reviewing the footage exhaustively, I knew that I had only one option, and that is to terminate the employees. And I think as law enforcement, if we are ever going to get out of this space that we are in today, we have to recognize that our behaviors cannot consistently be pardoned because we are law enforcement. These are good guys. I know them as individuals. I've worked with the one for over 20 years. But they made that level of mistake that cannot be rolled back. And if I stand before you and the community day in and day out, reassuring you that this department is different, that we do things differently, that our expectations are different, then I, above all others, have to rise and meet that standard. So I apologize. I apologize to both of the individuals. I believe one's a Spelman student, one's a Morehouse student. How we behaved as an agency, as individuals, was unacceptable. And I know that we caused further fear to you in a space that's already so fearful for so many African Americans. And I am genuinely sorry.
And that was a year ago, and nothing's happened. And we're here right now, and this is the problem. This is why we're in this space, as we're trying to build a bridge and unite policing and the community. We are put in situations where we don't have any type of accountability. There's zero accountability. So what are people supposed to think? What are African Americans supposed to think when they see incidents like this and nothing happens? When you have a police chief apologizing, admitting excessive force was used, and nothing happens. And we have to sue the city and the mayor and everything else to go through this fight because the city will not take accountability. We've resolved cases all across this country with every other city that we had cases. The city of Atlanta, at least, 20 of us, haven't resolved a single one. We are the only city acting in this manner, and it's horrific. But that's fine. We'll see you in court. That's what juries are for, and that's where the lesson is going to be taught. The parents want to address the impact of this on their kids.
Yep, I am Charles Young, the father of Messiah Young. This is my wife, Genesis Taylor Young, who is the mother of Messiah Young. I'll keep this really short. I really want to reflect on the impact. Obviously, you know, they've pulled it over and over again. It's over a year and a month later, and we still haven't moved towards any resolution in this case. However, the impact of being unsure of your future, the impact of, I call Messiah a low-key guy, right? And seeing this footage over and over and over again, those triggers have affected him in such a tremendous way. I want to quote my wife here. She says, you know, he's like the walking dead. You know, with all due respect to those who have lost their families to brutality and misconduct, she's right. She's right. We discussed with Tanaya's parents, we always say there's something different about them. They're just not the same kid, right? And yeah, he's a young man, she's a young woman at this point, but these are our kids, right? These are our kids, and they're just not the same. That statement of the walking dead is so, I mean, when she first said it, it resonated with me, and I said, babe, you know what, you're right. That's exactly what we're doing, because you know what? He can't move forward. He can't move forward. They can't make plans. There are. I'm so kind of hurt by, you know, the counseling that he's going through and that sort of thing. It continues to this day, right? It continues to this day. There's therapy that needs to take place, but I just want to say that this, you know, to the city of Atlanta, to the Atlanta Police Department, there's something that can be done. We know that there's something that can be done. We are at a moment of change, so let's just start. Let's take steps to make that change. It's not it's not a difficult thing. It's not a difficult thing at all. And I sense your frustration, obviously, with the city of Atlanta as well. But let's just make this change, right? Let's just start to take steps to make change. Let's impact change. Let's not put this thing behind us. Let's put it in front of us and build from it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lakeisha Pilgrim. This is my husband, Twan Pilgrim, and we're tonight's parents. It's really hard for me to say how I feel because just being here is like, we were 55 hours away from our daughter when this incident happened, and we had to travel for all that time through airports, watching it on the news. In foreign countries, we're seeing this happen to our child, and we couldn't be there for her immediately. I left a little girl at Spelman to pursue her dreams, and I came back to a shell of her. I see her and Messiah every day, and I watch them struggle. I watch them try to be normal, and at this point, we don't even know what normal is because their lives have changed so much. We just ask, for the people who did this to them to be held accountable. And that's all we can ask for and pray for. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, Dennis Bryan from Public Court. As I look at the lawsuit, I notice that Chief Shields is not listed on the complaint. Is that an indication that she may be cooperating with the attorneys and pursuit of justice?
No.
No, it isn't. It's just for legal reasons we named the current chief of police.
Messiah, when the video was being played, I noticed that you averted your eyes. And when you spoke to us, you talked about it still being a trigger. Is it still hard for you to see the video?
Yeah, listen, this is a real trauma for him. Of course, it's very, very difficult for him to view this video. It's difficult for you watching him view the video. So imagine how he feels right now and how he felt then. So yeah, it is very traumatic. It's not something that you want to keep reliving and keep talking about time and over again, which they have to do.
Mr. Stewart, Attorney Davis spoke to the role that these kind of lawsuits play as we've had the discussion about policing in America. I wanted to see if you could also speak to the overall role that these kind of lawsuits play as the discussion of policing in America continues and as they were out to protest and understand.
I mean, it's the only way that we can try and change policing, by exposing things like that, like we showed in the video, from the depositions that'll come out, from the testimony. You see the battle over the George Floyd Policing Act, how that's just stuck. When that would help the community, that would change policing. A lot of people have this insane view that by filing these lawsuits or by wanting accountability against police officers, that you're against policing. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Just because you're fighting for civil rights doesn't mean you don't respect the officers that are out there risking their lives. But you do have to hold the officers accountable that practice this kind of brutality. Why is that so hard in this country? We get held accountable as lawyers if we do something. You're going to get held accountable at your job if you do something. Why is it, as the chief said, why is it that accountability doesn't happen just because you have a badge on it? It will protect the community and it will protect the officers that are actually out there doing a good job. So we have to keep fighting in court because accountability is rare.
Your firm negotiated with the city of Minneapolis government in a lawsuit there. How would you contrast the approach that city took to what you're seeing in Atlanta?
Night and day. So the city of Minneapolis, was actively trying to rectify the situation that they knew their officers caused. The city of Atlanta is actively not trying to do the same thing. And we're seeing this in every single case, as we discussed with you earlier. So this case is no different. The city hasn't reached out to us and said, hey, listen, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's work on it. And the city of Minneapolis did those things. And you see the difference in how these two situations are playing out in these two different cities.
Do you think there'll ultimately be that accountability on the criminal side? Because I guess that's still working its way through, or is it, where does it stand with a couple of these officers?
I mean, you know, you've seen some of them are back to work, you know, and they have their jobs back and they're moving and their lives are moving along. So the accountability is not on any side. They're not moving on the criminal side and they're not moving on the civil side. So for these kids, they're in limbo. They're stuck. And like they said, they can't move forward because they don't know what's happening. So these are people who are not trying to do small things. They want to do big things. They want to move on. And it's just stuck in limbo. It's not moving civilly or criminally. And that's why we have to do things like this today.
What's the realistic timeline of what happens next?
As far as the civil case is concerned, they have, you know, an amount of time to answer the lawsuit, and they'll answer the lawsuit, and we'll start discovery, and we will, we'll get to the bottom of what's going on, and we'll actually figure it out and see if the city actually wants to, you know, be serious about this or continue doing what they've been doing.
All right, last one.
So we'll see you next week for more accountability?
Yeah, in the next week.
You'll see the lawsuit next week.
And another one. And until we get some type of resolution, some type of movement on these cases, we're going to continue to be here. So, you know, get your cameras ready and make sure your phones are charged up.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. Every other city is trying to resolve these cases. You see it every day on the news. We just resolved the case with Baton Rouge, with Alpha Sterling. We've resolved George Floyd. The city of Atlanta is the only city acting like this. And for it to be the city of civil rights, it's the city of injustice right now when it comes to these cases. And it's confusing, especially when you have direct proof of inappropriate behavior. You know, we aren't making this up. We aren't just going after some random officer. You see what happened in the video. What if this was your kid? These are kids. I mean, they body slammed a little girl. No matter what color you are, how are you not upset? That was your kid. If these kids went to UGA, what would happen? So, we'll see you next week.
Messiah would like to,
I just wanted to answer your question. I, didn't want to have any disconnect. Just being in that position and kind of not really knowing why you were, being attacked and being, bombarded in that manner, it's very confusing, So seeing this is kind of like a constant reminder of, me being in a space of confusion and not knowing, where I am. Throughout the country, this is happening on a, like I said, a daily basis. Just the other day, 5 young men were tased, like, in a similar fashion. So it's an ongoing problem, and to constantly see this is very diminishing and very it just puts you in a very foggy place. So just wanted to give you that.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kelly will email links if y'all leave your card to all the videos that we got from the bike.
If you don't have your business cards, if you'll leave your email address on one of these pieces of paper, we'll email you the video clips as well as the copy of the video.
We can spread it. It's gonna go, are we still live?
Oh, yes. I just don't know what time.
Give me a call. I'll call.
Okay.
Can you put my email on there?